first topic is building your growth. This is a very interesting topic, like drive your career. Whatever your first thought in terms of like career and all that, you need drive. In any aspects of your life, anyone can drive their career forward and get that next promotion and access the fast track, securing higher lifetime earnings. Starting with mindset, a few essential things will make a difference in the eyes of senior management as they decide who to develop faster. To deliver this topic is a former CFO and C-level executive at Fortune 500 companies and very passionate about helping others grow. Like more than 30 years of career, having successfully pursued his passion of developing world-class teams and talent. Former members of his team have grown to become CFOs and business leaders at premier global companies. So without further ado, we have Eduardo Lopez Pineda to give us Build Your Growth.
Thanks, everybody, for being here. And I'm super excited to join you. Like Phil just indicated, just like Cogent, our gentle hosts, my motivation, like I will explain in a minute, is giving back as well. I have a pretty long career, longer than I care to admit, maybe, but I've learned a bunch of things. So the conversation today is drive your career. And the main premise is that anybody can drive their career as far as they want, as far as they can. And it's just a matter of setting your mind to it. This is called Build Your Growth. And that's essentially based on trainings that I offer, that I work with people, but I'll tell you all about it. I'm originally from Mexico. I'm an electronics engineer with an MBA. I went to graduate school in UT Austin. Started my career in management consulting. From there, moved to consumer goods at Procter & Gamble. I spent an ungodly amount of years there, starting with IT, then moved into finance, and then ran the gamut of all of the assignments in finance. So cost accounting, and went through treasury, accounts payable, accounts receivable, you name it, financial planning and forecasting, financial analytics, ended in competitive intelligence, which is pretty similar to strategic planning. From there, I joined the pharmaceutical industry, first with Merck, then with Pfizer. Pfizer took me across the world. And finally, I ended up running as a global CFO for specialty care, anti-infectives, ophthalmology, endocrinology, things like this. So I did that for a little while. Then Philips, the Dutch company, came and took me away to the Netherlands. I spent time there being the chief audit executive. They spun off their lighting sector, and the CEO of that company that they spun off and offered publicly invited me to join as his chief audit executive. Then he asked me to come back to the US. So I was the CFO for the Americas. And then I got to the manufacturing industry as the CFO for Fluke. And I founded my company, VSharp, last year. I'll tell you a little bit about that, but I'm an avid diver. I love reading. I love cooking. I make a pretty mean paella for those of you who like paella. I like learning. Next on my list is Indian food. So I'm going to try my hand at that whenever I get a chance. I love golf. I suck at it. I'm awful at golf, but I love it. I like being outside, talking to people. I have two marvelous daughters. I have a wife better than I could have hoped for. They are the light of my eyes. They're the reason I get up every morning. They're the reason I do everything I do. So I feel very blessed. And I have a very funny little beautiful white dog that's crazy. Every time I'm able to come near the door, she goes nuts and starts yelling and screaming her head off. So she's very funny. She's very gentle, loud as she is. So why did I do that? When I announced that I was stepping down, the first reaction I was, what? It's really my passion, right? So I want to help others. And I'm convinced that if I could get from nothing to CFO, anybody can get from whatever they are to whatever they want to be. It's nothing magical. It's just focusing on a few key things that I'm going to share. That word, share, is something important that I do, or I try to do a lot. And that's why I founded VSharp too, just to share what I've learned. If I can save you time, if I can help you avoid hitting your face against the wall or falling and scraping your knees, I'm going to try to do that. Avoid the bruises and scrapes. I would have loved to have a voice when I was growing to help me think about how to approach difficult situations, how to interact with stakeholders, how to better build a team that would help me grow and learn. I want to be that voice for people. So that's why I founded my company. It's a very different life from my C-suite CFO role, but it's filled me with satisfaction. I'm super happy to be here. So thank you for having me. So what does VSharp do? Essentially three things. I focus on executive development. So I do one-on-one coaching for high-level executives who I'm helping plan their career, think about big projects that they're managing that have global visibility. These are multi-billion-dollar companies. I also create courses, and then I do coaching. But my finding has been, and this is also part of why I founded VSharp, coaching for high-level executives is pretty popular and well-established, but it's very expensive. I would have loved to have a coach, but I couldn't afford a coach. So what I tried to do was create an offer that will give coaching in a more accessible way to people who are younger in their careers, who really want to grow. I do what I call a career map. That's 3 sessions of 1 hour, or a blueprint, 3 full days that we dive deep, or guided implementation, which is over 6 months. And that really ends up in the strategy being implemented and keynote speaking. So let's dive into the topic. I'm going to share 3 pillars with you. 3 pillars that, in my experience, hold everything you need to grow your career. And the first of those pillars is you. So when you think about your career, the first place to start is inside your head. Let me tell you about myself and why I'm such a fervent believer that you are the one who determines how fast, how far, how deep you get, how successful you're going to be. I just told you a minute ago that I'm a former CFO. Part of what I did was just allocate capital. A large portion of my time was thinking, we have profits, we have cash. Do we pay dividends? Do we buy stock back? Do we invest it back into the company? If we do that, do we want to launch a project or a product? Do we want to build a plant? Do we want to buy equipment? Do we want to upgrade our technology? What do we want to do? And if we want to do a launch, then which product? Where? In which sequence? For which business unit? If we want to do a project, which one goes first? How much money does each one of them get? A lot of allocation. That's an important concept. And I'm going to say that each one of you today, you're all CFOs. And so you might be thinking, what is he smoking? Why does he say I'm a CFO? Listen, you are a CFO, and I'm going to prove it. Think about your most precious resource, more than money. Time. This line here represents time. That's your life, from 0, which is your cradle, to 100, which is that exit door we're going to go through. And that red arrow, that's kind of where we are, generally speaking, right? A bunch of you, I'm pretty sure, are far to the left of me. The point is, we're all kind of in the middle, and everything that's to the left of that red arrow has gone by. It's gone. You cannot get it back. Good, bad, whatever you did with it, you cannot do anything about it. All you have left is from that red arrow to the future. That's why I said you guys are all CFOs. You guys all allocate your most precious resource, which is time. All you have left is from the red arrow to your tombstone. That's all you have left. What are you going to do with that time? That's, again, why I started VSharp and why I'm doing this. I want to have an impact and help people like yourselves. So here's a question for you. If you think of that time, what are you going to do? What do you want to do? And why do you want to do it? Do you want to be promoted? Do you want to have more money? Want to get into the fast track? You want to start a business? What do you want to do? There's no right answers, right? Along with the questions and with this timeline that I just shared, I get a lot of questions in my trainings and from my one-on-one coaching clients. I just want to be successful. You might be wondering the same. You're all successful already. Today, you are successful, and you've been successful for a while. Earl Nightingale said, success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal. Let me repeat that. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal. If you already have a goal, an objective, and you're pursuing it, and you are making progress, then you're successful already. And so life is a succession of targets and achievement, target, achievement, target, achievement. So you set a target, you work towards it, then you plateau, then you need to set new targets, work towards them, set new plateau, set new targets, and so on. That's life. As long as you're moving towards something that is worth it, you're going to be successful. That's why I'm telling you, the fact that you're here, that we're having this conversation tells me you guys are all successful. Never put yourself down saying, I'm going to be successful. Not now. I'm not. Yes, you are. Success is not a destination. Success is the journey. This is why I love this saying. As long as you have objectives that you're pursuing, you're successful. Why do I believe that you can drive your career, that you can grow as far as you want, as fast as you can? Because it's all here. 80% of it is in your mindset. It's how you think about it. It's whether you believe that you're going to do it. 20% is the knowledge. It's the execution. Whether you're the best coder in the world, the best accountant in the world, the best whatever it is you are in the world, if you don't believe you're going to be successful, you won't be. Think about people playing basketball and you see them going to the penalty shots, and you see those that are great, LeBron James and others. You see their faces. They know they're going to put that ball through the hoop, and they do. They never miss. You see it in their eyes. Others are scared, and you see that they're tentative. In their minds, they know they can fail. They know they're scared they're going to fail, and they fail. Like Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right on both counts. It's all here. And the first thing with being successful and driving your career starts within yourself. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? And be convinced that you can do it. You got to see yourself being successful. Now, the other thing that you got to think when it comes to you, our first pillar, is you exist in an environment that contains your peers, so people that work alongside yourself, your own mindset, and then everybody else. And that includes family, that includes your team, that includes your boss. Everybody's there. and you're in the middle. So you need to understand how to manage yourself. That's the first thing. I do this over more than 1 hour in my full day event, and over more than 20 minutes in my 3-hour event. So there's no time to go into what else goes in here. I'm just going to say you need to be aware of who surrounds you. There are strategies for dealing with different types of people who are difficult, people who are inspiring, people who might not be as honest as you want them to be. You need to come up with a strategy. You need to identify them first. They need to come up with a strategy for how to best deal with them. You need to manage yourself. Let me talk a little bit about managing yourself. There's 7 things that I teach in my events or to my coaching clients, and this is a topic for hours. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes and touch on a couple of these. When you think about the U pillar, there's 7 things. First one is your vision. Do you understand your business? Do you understand the strategy of your business? Do you understand the market, the priorities, the constraints? If you do, how clearly has that crystallized into a vision that you shared with your team? Are you sharing it with them? Do they know why they're doing what they're doing? How do you spend your time in BC work, just killing emails, doing things that are urgent but might not be important? And that's something that I also tell people who come to my trainings and my coaching clients themselves. There's a lot of things that are going to be competing for your energy, for your time. You isolate the noise of the world and you look inside yourself. And you focus on what's important, on getting the skills, on getting the focus, on getting the energy, and convincing yourself that you can. How do you behave under pressure? Are you transmitting stress to your team? Are you demotivating them because you're transmitting stress? Do you have a style that's true to yourself and you sustain it? So there's more things. Like I said, I don't have sufficient time to go into it, but these are 7 things that you should be thinking about every time that you're in this U pillar. When you manage yourself, you should be analyzing and identifying how you're doing each of these 3 things. Let's go to the second pillar, and that's your environment, your team, and people external you that are your stakeholders. So when you think about your team is critical to your growth. Over my 30 plus years, goodness knows how many meetings evaluating talent and deciding who got promoted, who got accelerated, who got developed first. The key question that we ask every single time is, how good is he or she at developing talent, producing the leaders of the future? That's why I applaud Cogent for offering this opportunity. This helps turn you into that next leader, into your best version. So when you think about your team, you need to identify that green dot, top right-hand side. Everybody knows this 9-box grid. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with it. Vertical axis is potential, going from low to high. Horizontal axis is performance, going from low to high. Top right-hand quadrant, green dot, is high potential, high performance. You need to invest disproportionately in that person. Help them grow fast. Give them challenging assignments. Make sure that they're growing. Flip side, lower left-hand side, that's the person who has a low potential, low performance. They're not pulling their weight. And you need to do something about both. Right-hand side, we said, develop them quick. Lower left-hand side, you either put them on a probation, let them know that they're not doing their share of the work, or you might need to let them go. Crude as it sounds. Every second they're there, they're sucking the energy out of the rest of the team because everybody's doing more work because that person or persons, they're not carrying their own weight. When you get the mixture right, your team is going to grow and they're going to push you up. You're going to grow because there's nowhere else to go. If you develop a successful team, you're going to go up. So that's the link between the team and your growth. The other aspect of the externals is your stakeholders. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time here, but this is like a morning exercise that we do in the 3rd day of our full day training. So this is just a topic unto itself. Let me just maybe quickly share that you need to be thinking about the stakeholders, those people who have power over your career, who are going to talk about you. We're going to determine if you get promoted, if you not get promoted, and think about them using 2 axes. One is the power that they have over your work. How much of a say do they have? How much of an influence? The other one is horizontal axis, which is how interested are they in your work? So somebody who has a lot of power and a lot of interest, you want to manage closely, keep them informed. You want to keep them close to you. You want to know what they need. Flip side of the coin, lower left-hand side, low power, low interest. Monitor them. You don't need to spend a ton of energy in them. So there's a few questions there on the screen. I would love for you to write them down and to use when you're thinking about everybody around you. Everybody's a stakeholder. Your neighbor's a stakeholder. Your wife or husband's a stakeholder. Your boss, your peers, your team. Everybody's a stakeholder. Where do they belong? What are you going to do about them? Because it requires a different strategy for each of the different quadrants. Keep that in mind as you're planning how to best develop your career. You also need to be cognizant about the influence network. And what this shows, again, very detailed, and we spend half a morning creating this one in our trainings for a couple of weeks doing this in one-on-one coaching. So it's a vast and deep topic. What this does is just represents all of your stakeholders in the context of a project. This is a project that was a part of a BU restructuring that happened a few years ago in a multi-billion-dollar company. And I was the CFO. Big spheres are big influence on that project. The director of product development, the head of product development, was leading this restructuring. So you see that big bubble. He has an overall influence that is large on that project. The thickness of the arrows represents the strength of the influence in either direction. You can see that then there's a bunch of players there. Just to exemplify one, I'm there in the middle, the CFO. Well, I was there in the middle, past tense. The head of HR, the CHRO, and I were talking a lot, very, very closely because of the synergies and all of the plans and the money that needed to be planned. So I was holding the strings of the purse, so I needed to be there. That's why you can see that there was a lot of influences moving back and forth. I'll move on from this slide, maybe just highlight that. When you think about stakeholders, they are not always apparent. So they're not always going to be in the org chart for the project. They might be people you don't know. The key factor here is if they influence a stakeholder, they're a stakeholder. So that's the case with the transformation bubble that you see there. That was a person running a project for HR. And the CHRO did not take a step without talking to this person. So he became a stakeholder, and that's why you see them on the graph. How are you going to understand how the influences flow, how the information flows? That's important as you think of your stakeholders. So that's the second pillar. Let's talk about the third one, your presence. I'm going to try to step on the accelerator because I see that I'm starting to get close to the half-hour mark, but these topics are just key, so I'll try to cover them fast. Third pillar, your presence. So first, your mindset, you, yourself, your head, how you manage yourself, how you manage your environment. Second one is the external, your stakeholders, your team, how you develop your team, how they push you up. The third one is going to be your presence. So the first thing in defining your presence, your authority, is going to be define your turf. I'm not saying go out there and pick a fight, poke their eyes or slap them or push them around. No, my go-to mode is not to be combative. I did like to be firm though. You need to know what your deliverables are. What is your core responsibility? What is that space that only you can talk about? You document it, your deliverables are documented, your timelines and your timeframes are documented. And you make everybody know too what you're going to be accountable for and uniquely qualified to speak about. Then when somebody comes and tries to encroach, you need to be firm about asserting your authority. Hey, John, thank you for your opinion. I really value it, but this is something that I'm going to have to drive. So if I need more input, I'll come to you. Doesn't mean a fight. It just means be firm, be polite, but defend your space. You don't want people just crawling all over there and telling you how to do your job. So that's an important thing. And then at the bottom is you got to make sure, we were talking about developing your team. If you have a strong team, empower them because they're going to represent you and your team. And they're going to assert the authority of your function as well when they talk to other stakeholders, to other teams. Now, think about an executive that you admire and you've been in that meeting where everybody's talking and everybody's kind of chit-chatting, and all of a sudden this executive walks in and everybody lowers their voice and everybody turns to the door to see who this person is. And they're all kind of looking at him or her because the person fills the room, commands respect because you want to hear everything they have to say. That's gravitas. And that's what you need to have. Think about those people, learn the factors that determine their presence and emulate them. So if you believe you can, pillar number one, you. If you manage your team, if you manage your stakeholders, and if you fill the room, why wouldn't you be able to grow? Because that'll determine your personal brand. And your personal brand is who you are. When people hear your name, what are they thinking about? Phil is a great people leader. He's a fantastic organizer of online events, or he's a fantastic leader of projects that are complex and they're big. I got a great vision, or super articulate when speaking. Now, beware, brands can be good, which is what I'm showing on the slide, but they can also be bad. If you have a bad brand, is it possible to change it? Yes, absolutely possible to change it. It's easier to create a new brand than it is to get rid of your old one. Create a new one and you're going to be fine. You can do this. So let me summarize and recap. This is, I'm just reusing a slide here to be quite honest about it. And this is the curriculum for the 3-day event. What I want to show you is just as a recap, these are the 3 things that we looked at today. So first is you, then your environment, then your presence. Unlock that mindset. Believe that you can. That's the only way you're going to be able to do it. Believe that you can. Remember again what Henry Ford said. If you believe you can, or if you believe you can't, you're right. Manage yourself, manage your peers, manage your boss, manage stakeholders. On your environment, we talk about those externals. How do you manage the influences? How do you identify the stakeholders? How do you develop your team? There's a lot, like I said, about this whole space. So we spend a full day just thinking about that environment, a full afternoon working on effective relationships and external networking, internal networking. How do you work with difficult people? And so a third pillar, your presence, your executive presence, your authority. How do you project your influence, your personality outside of your company? Develop that business knowledge. How do you assert your authority? This is what we saw today. If you do this, because that's what I did. You're going to get there. But the most important thing is that you believe that you can do this. And that's why I'm using this slide, just because of what's at the bottom there. You can totally do this. Listen, I'm just a regular human being, just like you are. And if I could, anybody can. I a bunch of people in my teams, and that's why I think I was so successful in helping them develop, get to where they got. We're a lot smarter than I am. So it's not a matter of smarts. To a certain degree it is, but it's more about, can you believe it? Can you do it? That's my invitation to you. Believe in yourself. Look inside. You can do this. There's nothing that stops you. You can drive your. And finally, this is my final slide. And I wanted to put there on the screen in case you wanted to take a screenshot, or if you wanted to take a quick note. This is where you can reach me for further questions and answers, or if there's any other question. I can be found pretty much in every social media. If you have doubts that you can, if you have fears that you can't, if you need the faith of somebody to believe in you because you don't have faith in yourself, borrow mine. You can do it. I know you can. I'm rooting for you. I wish you the best. I wish you nothing but success. And with that, thank you for the chance and the opportunity. And I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. Like, I didn't notice the time until you mentioned about the time constraints. Like, the presentation was that good. Thank you so much for bringing that one up. Like, you really brought like your total experience without saying you have more than 30 years. It shows on how you were talking. Definitely.
And hopefully that's not because of my white hair, Phil.
No, it's not.
All right.
That totally looks good on you. Would like to acknowledge our attendees. We have Q&A and the chat, so please feel free to do so. Yes, we have Bradley. Yeah, you can open your mic if you wanted to interact.
Great. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly, Bradley. How are you? How you doing?
Very good, Eduardo. Thank you so much. That was very helpful. I'm particularly interested in this notion of cultivating presence, which is something that I work with in my coaching practice quite a bit, and the sense of authenticity and vulnerability that kind of goes along with it when you're talking about Gravitas. Can you talk a little bit more about different ways of cultivating that and approaching that? Because often it's something we want to seem, but it's to really have that Gravitas requires a being, that it requires a sort of a sinking in and a self-assuredness, which is not always easy for folks. So can you speak a little bit to that?
I absolutely can. I would love to do that. And so first of all, thanks for the question. And I think that's probably one of the most important topics. There's a reason why I start with mindset and with that pillar called you, and the fact that you need to believe that you can in order to be able to do it. And Gravitas starts with that, right? So when you fill a room, you've seen even the shy, I'm pretty sure you've seen even the most shy of your colleagues speak in some meeting or other where all of a sudden everybody quiets down. Even if this is like the most retracted, smallest person in the room, you still see that sometimes, not always, sometimes they speak and they command the attention of the room. That's because they are within them. They know that they know the topic. They know that they have an authority. They see themselves as being that authority. Mm-hmm. So this whole notion of visualizing success, of believing that you can, of convincing yourself that you're worthy. Listen, anybody around the table today, whenever you're invited to a meeting, to an event, to whatever it is, you are not walking around the hallway and then you tripped and fell on a chair at the table. Nobody's doing you any favors. You didn't pay anybody to be at the table. You're there because you belong at the table, because you have something to say. And that's the belief, and that's the knowledge and the self-assuredness that comes from knowing your stuff. Listen, let me close with this, and hopefully this is helpful. One of my mentors is an ex-CFO for a company that's more than $70 billion with a B. So big ass, I'm sorry, pardon my French here, that big job. Sorry, Phil, you might need to bleep me out later. And he told me, I asked him this question, and I said, listen, aren't you, like, I would get super nervous in those analyst calls. And he said, do you ever feel like an imposter? Because I was going to give a presentation to the CEO. I was very nervous. And I said, help me. Do you ever feel nervous? I feel super nervous. I've never spoken to the CEO. I don't know if he knows me. What if I mess up? What if he asks me something I don't know? Gosh, my hands were sweating. My hands were trembling. My knees felt like, and so he's like, Eduardo, listen, every time I speak with analysts, this every quarter, every time I feel like I don't belong there. And that's why I prepare more. And that's why I get a lot better informed about what the questions are that might happen. And very important here, I visualize myself being successful in that call. I visualized myself talking with authority. And the guy was the best I've ever seen. But my point is, everybody feels this. So if anybody says that they don't feel fear of not being able to fill the room, to command a topic, to have gravitas, if somebody tells me, oh, I know, I'm never afraid, I don't have the famous imposter syndrome, that person belongs in the loony bin, because everybody feels. Let me stop here. Does that help? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Thank you, Eduardo. Yeah, I appreciate it.
You got it.
Sure. Thank you so much again for that.
Thank you,
And
everybody.
First of all, let me appreciate Mr. Eduardo Lopez for the wonderful session he had given. It was so lovely to hear you, sir. Let me sincerely applaud you for the beautiful session you have given.